Now here at Rocket Sloth, we've covered a ton of different types of fun runs. Things that we've done like no shooting or beating Halo 2 without touching the ground, all the way to things like Halo Reach speedruns. But there is one run that's always been really peculiar to us that happened a couple of years ago, back in 2015. And that was when a Twitch chat tried to collectively beat Halo Combat Evolved together. So back in the earlier days of Twitch, one of the biggest things that just took over was when Twitch completed Pokemon by using the Twitch chat to input commands into the game. It was a really huge deal, and it became this really viral sensation that also went on to inspire a ton of other content creators to set up streams playing different types of games. Now, some of you guys may know the YouTuber Generalkidd, who does a ton of Halo content where he tests out specific scenarios in Halo or does different types of mods, and he actually went ahead and set up a Twitch live stream that would allow the chat to input commands to attempt to play through Halo Combat Evolved. Honestly, this is a completely crazy endeavor, and we actually reached out to Generalkidd and got some interesting information that really helped us piece together this run, because this run is one of the craziest and longest Halo runs we have ever looked at in the history of this channel, and possibly the longest run we will ever end up looking at. So huge thanks to Generalkidd for helping us out with this video. So when this whole thing first started out, the stream went live on the Pillar of Autumn, the first level of Halo Combat Evolved, and from what we can see from the earliest videos when this whole thing first started, things were pretty slow as far as how many people were watching at the beginning, which made navigating through the earlier sections of the first level relatively easy here. However, as this game continued to stream, and it was a pretty lengthy stream, more and more viewers would come on and begin testing out how the functionality worked with putting in commands to control the Master Chief. Now, Generalkidd actually designed the program himself that would take the input from the chat and put them into the game input, basing his code off of an open source Twitch chatbot that originally is meant to be used as a moderator. And essentially by entering different letters or phrases, the game would read the chat and essentially move Master Chief one chat input at a time, and from there, the Halo community was left to their own devices to try to see if they could complete this game. Now, one thing that really sets Twitch Plays Halo apart from other Twitch Plays runs is the fact that Halo is a first-person shooter. This isn't like Pokemon where you just use a directional pad and then press the A button to talk to someone. Halo has you moving multiple joysticks, having triggers to shoot where you have to aim, and of course you have to navigate a three-dimensional world. So the gameplay itself, starting things off, went probably just about as awfully as you would expect, and this will be a recurring thing throughout this run. It's extremely difficult to control the Master Chief with multiple people putting in their own inputs, Chief only moving one input at a time, and the fact that there was a really heavy Twitch delay back in the day of around 23 seconds or so, which would progressively get longer the longer that you watch the stream without refreshing the page, really meant that Master Chief was going to be in for a very, very challenging adventure, to say the least. Still, despite a lot of people just discovering the stream for the first time, the Pillar of Autumn was actually defeated in 1 hour and 40 minutes, which actually is very, very short compared to the levels that will follow after the first one. But the people in the Twitch chat continued on, and the level Halo was next, and this was a completely different story compared to the first level. And if you're like me and remember watching this back in 2015, this is probably the level you most likely remember. At this point in the stream's popularity, there were between hundreds to thousands of players on at a time trying to control the Master Chief, and that's not something that is easily done here, especially on this level, because first of all, the checkpoint system is a little bit weird and it can take a while to get a checkpoint, and second of all, the Master Chief is facing a very, very narrow bridge at the very start of this level that he has to cross. And when you have hundreds to thousands of inputs going on in a few minutes, doing something as simple as walking across a bridge in a very straight line becomes impossible. Now, in the Twitch community, there was a lot of camaraderie in the chat chat really working together to try to beat this level, especially as the hours passed of people tediously trying to see if Master Chief could one day cross this bridge. But through all of that, there was also a lot of trolls that came into that would purposely try to throw the Master Chief completely off of the bridge. So where there would be 100 people working together trying to move the Chief correctly, there would be just one person who could essentially cause the Master Chief to completely walk off the cliff. This wasn't a simple challenge that would just take hours to complete. This wasn't even something that took an entire day. Honestly, during the course of people being stuck on this level, the stream numbers actually would drop quite significantly and make it where there were less people playing, just because all hope on the possibility of maybe beating this bridge alone was starting to fade away in the community. However, with the loss of interest, it actually caused a more tight-knit communication between the players that were on. And when we pair that with a late night game stream where most people were asleep and the stream numbers were a little lower than even normal, they were actually able to work together to coordinate crossing the bridge, which was an amazing feat. Essentially, the strategy would be one person would spam the walk forward button while other people in the chat would spam the hit button, which would cause the game to read each input individually, which made it harder for someone to mistype a direction or for a troll to come along and mess it up, because it would at least delay the troll's input, where one step in the wrong direction or one jump wouldn't necessarily throw the Chief off, and maybe they could work around it in one way or another and discourage trolls. Now, after a ton of tries on this, they eventually walked across the bridge. This section alone took 78 hours from beginning when they started this level to the time it took for them just to walk across the bridge. However, once the bridge was crossed, there was a new re-interest in the stream as a ton of people started flocking back into the game because finally they could see something else and hear something other than the lines that Cortana keeps saying at the beginning of the level, because they died so many times in that opening area. The rest of the level Halo did go along a little bit better. Obviously, there was no big hold-up areas like the cliff section where they had to cross the bridge. Of course, just walking in general took forever to just make their way up to the first firefight area, and from the time they actually got the Warthog to the time they got the Warthog inside of the tunnel where they would have to make the jump, this alone actually took almost an entire day just getting to that section. So you can just keep that in perspective. Of course, there was a long period they were also stuck in the cave with the Warthog because they kept jumping out accidentally and then having to find their way back into the driver's seat. And then also the cave's really dark in different areas, and they had to make a jump across a ramp, which surprisingly they were able to pull off by everyone just spamming the walk button, which actually kind of makes sense because with the Warthog, pressing a sidestep button won't have you turn as quickly when you already have momentum going forward. And eventually they were able to make it into the larger indoor area where they would activate the light bridge and cross it without nearly as much problem as they had when they had to cross the first bridge in this level. From there, the rest of the game pretty much persists of you finding Marines and then holding out with them and waiting for you to kill all of the enemies, or if your Marines can possibly try to aim in one way or another, maybe they'll help you take out the enemies. But literally, when you spend days on this level, eventually the Marines will kill the enemies, and eventually Twitch was able to beat this level as well. In total, from the time they started this level to the time they completed this level, over 123 hours had been played of people watching the stream trying to see if Master Chief could complete this level. Now, that was over 5 whole days for this level alone, but they were moving on to Truth and Reconciliation, and fortunately, this level doesn't have as many bridges, but there were cliffs that they would have to watch out for. But the real main problem that they were really faced with was the fact that there's actually more enemies here that are a little bit more intense than maybe what you would see on the level Halo. And since Master Chief can't really do too much to defend himself, as aiming and shooting is really hard enough as it is. It typically seemed like majority of the progress on any level in this run typically happened late at night when the viewer counts were at the lowest, and just a few players or just a single player would put the input in, trying to make as much progress as they could before the crowds of players would come back on. In some cases, some really cool things were even done. Like, this guy did a jump shot and no-scoped an elite at the last second right before the Master Chief would have died. It was pretty impressive with a 25-second chat delay. But the outside section of this level was pretty rough, with the enemies like hunters and the firefights you have to go on, and Master Chief can die really easily. But once they were able to push their way to the inside section, they had another issue with the tight hallways and enemies that are really abundant everywhere, making it really difficult for players to stay alive with how much of a delay and how random the chat could cause Chief to go at different times. Tie that together with the fact that there's some challenging enemies inside, and there's multiple platforms you can fall off and have to do a ton of backtracking on, made this level definitely a challenging level, more hard than the first level for sure, but this level also wasn't nearly as bad as Halo was. So at this point, it took 15 hours before they completed Truth and Reconciliation, and essentially there was finally some big progress being made because they could at least know they could beat a level in under a day, so there was some hope in the community again. The Silent Cartographer was up next, and actually, comparatively to the other Halo levels that they had previously went on, this level only ended up taking 11 hours to complete, mostly because since this whole level is a lot of large open areas or indoor sections that are just rooms, there's not a lot of places where you can just walk off and fall to your death on. There definitely were less people trolling on this level than obviously on the level Halo, where it was really easy to just jump on and mess up the run constantly. It doesn't mean this level was a walk in the park either. None of these levels ended up being that, except the first one maybe, but 11 hours was pretty impressive comparatively when you look at the length of times for each of the levels we've seen in this run. Assault on the Control Room would end up being the next level, and this was a level that I definitely thought when doing research for this video would be one of the longest levels, just because this level always takes me forever to play through, and I was really surprised when I went back and scrolled through the length of this video that it only took a total of 12 hours to complete. I know it sounds really weird that I'm saying 12 hours sounds like a fast run for a Halo level, but when you compare it to what we've seen, it's actually quite fast, especially for the length to this level. Pretty much the main strategy here was just to walk forward and shoot stuff and hope for the best, and it seemed to more or less work. There was some crazy shenanigans that would go on towards the end section of the level, but for taking only half of a day to complete, getting through a lot of the littler challenges that were in this level was a pretty impressive feat for a Twitch chat. But then we got to 343 Guilty Spark, and this level alone brought a very, very new challenge that players would have to face: the Flood. Yeah, so the Flood is a very different type of enemy here because they mostly are effective by swarming the player and quickly kills off the player, and in this level you typically use an assault rifle here, and it proved to be a very challenging level because the Flood swarms Master Chief very quickly, and with the chat input delay that was present at the time, it made it a lot harder for players to defend the Master Chief, which would cause him to die a lot. And even with trying to inch your way through the level or walk across the tree bridge even at the beginning section of the level, there was other challenges that the Chief would have to face. One of the biggest challenges by far is the stack of crates you have to jump up to get to the upper level. Now, this was a section that players also really got stuck on here, because essentially they would not only have to jump, but they would have to do multiple crouch jumps to get Master Chief up to an upper platform and then walk him across the upper platforms without him falling off and having to jump back up again. This was a very challenging feat, and it took players a very long time to pull it off, but fortunately enough, at this point in the run, since they've already been pouring so much time into trying to make this run capable, the chat was able to come up with a system, just like on the bridge, to figure out how they were going to get past challenging obstacles and how they were going to pick who would be the person to single-handedly pull off the navigation inputs. And essentially, with how long they had already put into this run, it seemed only right that if someone was actively trying to troll the chat and just continuously mess up when everyone else was supporting supporting it, the mods would kind of quietly and quickly ban some people from the chat. Now, this was a little controversial at the time because it did stray away from the typical Twitch Plays Pokemon type run, but on the other hand, the players who were putting all of their time into doing this run are the players that had stuck around for the longest time, and the people who were trolling mostly would just show up only to mess up the run and then just leave afterwards. So while it was a little controversial at the time, I think for the most part people can still accept the fact that having a little hand here and there isn't necessarily a bad thing. If we look back at other runs like this, Twitch Plays Pokemon even added a democracy thing, which was also extremely controversial when they had that system in place, but it was needed to complete the game. They wouldn't have beaten the game otherwise had they not been able to go through the Safari Zone with the democracy mode enabled. Still, completion of 343 Guilty Spark ended up taking 36 hours. So even though there were trolls being dealt with, it wasn't like this run just became a walk in the park with some changes to how they were handling the community. But after players spent a day and a half on the short level 343 Guilty Spark, the library was up next, which took place late at night. So fortunately enough, there was some collaboration and plans to figure out how to clear this area. Now, of course, Chief starts off with a shotgun here, which does help quite a bit against the flood, and there's no platforms really to fall off. So it just became a matter of surviving and walking if they could clear this level. It wouldn't be the easiest level in the world, but they actually were able to get through this one in just 12 hours. But things moving forward would only get more challenging, as there was 3 final levels that each had their own unique challenges associated with it. 2 Betrayals has a huge section of the level where you have to fly a Banshee, and if it wasn't hard enough already to have an entire chat try to have Master Chief just not staring at a wall for a couple of minutes, imagine a whole chat trying to control a Banshee with Master Chief in it through a level where you have to fly to specific locations, land your Banshee, not fall off platforms, and go inside of certain rooms. This level was absolutely insane, taking 21 hours, not quite as long as 343 Guilty Spark, but still was a pretty lengthy challenge. And honestly, I think everyone collectively can agree that the fact that Twitch was able to even figure out how to fly a Banshee was impressive. There were definitely people out there who thought that this would be the thing that would completely kill the run, but it actually was possible and was completed. Then we can look to the level keys, which was very similar to the issues we had in Truth and Reconciliation. This time though, while there are a lot of tight hallways like before, there's also the flood, and the flood will mess you up just like on 343 Guilty Spark. But fortunately enough, they were able to complete this level in about the same amount of time it took to beat Truth and Reconciliation, coming in at just about 12 hours, which meant that there was just one final level left. But this level would serve to be a pretty problematic level for various reasons, and would also be a level that needed more intervention by Generalkidd, who was running the stream at the time, because if anyone wanted to see this run ever completed, there probably would need to be some level of intervention, because most likely this would not be possible otherwise. Now, starting things off in this level, of course, there is a ton of flood, and that is a challenge in itself, and pushing along that, even on easy difficulty, is extremely challenging. But then you also have a section where you have to climb up a ladder, which is pretty difficult when you're navigating alongside a ton of other people, and hype for the stream was really picking up again because they were finally on the final level. So there was a lot of people who were playing now. Now, this level was another level that took multiple days to complete. Essentially, getting to the engine room where you have to throw grenades in 4 different things was extremely taxing on this community, because besides the fact that getting grenades is difficult enough, as if you run out, you have to run around either killing enemies looking for new ones, or find your way back to the armory to pick up new grenades, then walk all the way back, aim a grenade, hopefully throw it at the right time with a 23-second delay and get it in the right thing. It honestly was not happening. It wasn't something that was going to happen. So eventually, Generalkidd went ahead and threw the players a bone and enabled a mod that gave the Master Chief unlimited grenades, which honestly, we don't really think that's unfair to the course of this run. We use skulls all the time when we do runs in Halo 1 and Halo 2 on this channel, as our videos are more about us testing out the possibility of something rather than trying to challenge ourselves even more. But some people still complained about it, so we thought we had to at least mention that this was something that was in fact added in. Now, after the addition of grenades, it still took a very long time before players were able to get lucky enough to throw grenades correctly in the right spot 4 times. And mind you, checkpoints are really awful in Halo CE. So it definitely was one of these bridge scenarios all over again where players would be stuck in an infinite loop of just not being able to get any further in the level. However, eventually they were able to clear the section and move on to the final part of the level, which is the Warthog run. Now, this was another thing that would need some intervention, as essentially with the input delay and how Master Chief just kind of slowly moves based off of one input at a time, Generalkidd went ahead and added in a simple mod that removed the timer in the top so that players could have an infinite amount of time to drive the Warthog. And since there's a ton of places where you can either be killed by the flood or you can drive off to your death, and the checkpoints in this area take you way back, they're not very forgiving. It definitely was a much needed addition. Of course, people complained, even though I don't see how anyone could possibly think the run would be completed with the timer still in place. Even after the removal of the timer, it took 32 more hours in the Warthog run section alone before finally a group of players were able to coordinate driving the Warthog, getting enough speed to make the final jump and driving to the end of the level, thus completing Twitch playing Halo once and for all. The 32 hours just to do the driving section brought that last level, the Maw, up to 81 hours, which is just short of the length of time it took the Halo level with the bridge. And in total, we went ahead and calculated up the times of every single level from the stream vids that we could find, and our estimations bring us up to the community taking 645.5 hours to complete Halo Combat Evolved, which equates to 26.9 days. And this is excluding all of the downtime the stream had, any pause times for maintenance. This is 26.9 days of pure gameplay. So it's really interesting how this game was still completed and that there was still a small dedicated community of players who, when no one else was on, would still try to chip away and move the Master Chief up a little bit closer and a little bit closer each time, so that when the masses would return, they had something new to work on. And that was something really cool to see. I remember watching this stream a lot back when it originally aired, and it's definitely one of the things that kind of inspired us to go on to do the weird types of Halo runs that we do now. But if you guys like these types of videos, we really want to do more coverage on not only the types of challenges that we do on this channel, but we want to be able to watch other types of challenges the community has done and talk about them as well. So if you like these types of videos, please let us know and be sure to subscribe with notifications on. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Rocket Elijah, or you can follow Luke at Rocket Sloth Luke, and we'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video. Bye guys.